Hello, 5th grade. Welcome to Lesson 1-2 for Envision. Your goal today is to understand the place value system working with decimals and fractions. And your learning goal, as we need you to understand it, is to represent decimals as fractions and fractions as decimals in the tenths and hundredths place. Your learning goals that I need you to write down today are these three. I can identify tenths, hundredths, and thousandths place value in decimal numbers. I can represent or convert a decimal to a fraction, and I can represent or convert a fraction to a decimal. Take a minute, write those in your notebook, and then pause the video. When you're finished, start the video again, and we'll be ready to continue. All right, let's write your vocabulary terms down. So your vocabulary terms that I need you to know for this chapter are the following. Fraction. A fraction is a symbol such as 2/3, 8/7, or even 564 1/1000ths. It is also used to name part of a whole. A fraction is always part of a whole, a part of a set, a location on a number line, or even division of whole numbers. A decimal is just like a fraction. It's a number with one or more numbers to the right of the decimal point. For example, 4.5, which is said 4 5/10, or 0.25, which is said 25 hundredths. Now, I want you to take a moment and write those vocabulary terms in your notebook. But remember, when we get to the decimal point, we always say it as an and when we are reading decimals. Decimals and fractions always represent part of one whole, part of a number. Take a minute, pause the video, write those down, and when you're finished, start the video again. All right, working with decimal place value. The place value system always includes decimal place values. Refer to this chart, and if you need to, remember we put the place value chart with the periods in it in our other lesson 1.1, so you might want to take a minute and put this place value chart in there also, because we've now added to it the decimal place values, which show tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. And notice that the place value to the right of the decimal shows the parts or the wholes, the fractions, and they end in the TH. So maybe take a minute and add to your place value chart the decimal values. Take a second and do that, and then pause the video and start it again when you're ready. All right, things that I really need you to remember, and you may want to write these in your notebook too. The decimals and fractions both represent part of one whole. And then when we get to the decimal point and reading the decimals, we always say and. It's the time in math that you're going to use and. You don't say 125, you say 125. But when you see 4.1, you say 4 and 1/10. I want you to remember that. All right, representing decimals as fractions. You always say and write the decimal as a fraction. So I want you to say and write this decimal, 0.25. So did you say 25 hundredths? If you did, good for you, great job. We write the decimal in fraction form exactly the way it sounds. When you say 25 hundredths, that's the fraction, 25 over 100. Let's do another one. Say and write the following decimal as a fraction, 1.6. Say it, write it. All right, did you say 1 6/10? And did you write 1 whole and then 6 over 10? If you reduce that fraction, it would also be 1 3 over 5, or 1 3/5. All right, did you do that? Let's do another one. Let's practice this one. Fractions as decimals. Fractions with 10, 100, or 1,000 as a denominator can also be written as fractions, and it's easy to do because they say their name. For example, 3/10 is written as 0.3. And some fractions, though, don't have 10, 100, and 1,000 as their denominator. They have different denominators, and it's easy to represent those as a decimal. It's simply a division problem. For example, you can write 3/5 as a decimal by simply dividing 5 into 3. And let's do that one in practice, and I'll show you how you can do that. All right, so we're going to represent this. Let me get my pen ready, 1 second. All right, so we're going to represent this as a decimal. So you think of the fraction Okay, let's do this again. Let's get my ink ready again. My pen messed up. We'll do this one more time. Okay, so when you think of this fraction looks exactly like the division symbol. I don't really like this yellow color. Let me change to something a little bit better that's going to work here. Okay, so this looks exactly like a division problem. So you can think of this fraction line as a dividing sign. So since it looks like division, you simply take your denominator and you divide your denominator into your numerator. So let's practice that and see what this is going to look like to get your decimal. So 5 divided into 3. 5 can't divide into 3 because 3 is smaller. So you have to add a decimal after your 3. You have to add a 0 because you can't divide into nothing. Not writing very neatly on this, but just ignore it for a little bit. So we're going to bring our decimal up right above our line. 5 divides into 3 0 times, so you have to have a 0 above the line. 5 times 0 is 0. Bring that down and subtract it. You're going to get 3. Bring down your 0. Now 5 can divide into 30. 5 divides into 30, as you know, 6 times. Put your 6 up on top. Multiply 5 times 6 is 30. Subtract your 30. You have nothing left over. So 3/5 as a fraction equals 6/10. And that's how you divide a fraction to come up with a decimal. All right, so now it's your turn to practice. I want you to turn these decimals or these fractions into decimals. So decimals into fractions and fractions into decimals. Make sure they're in your notebook for tomorrow, and the answers will be hanging up on the board and you can check those tomorrow. Once you're finished with those, I want you to pause, turn to the next page, and then there's a great challenge problem for you to do. All right, your challenge problem, I want you to read through it really, really carefully, complete it, put the answer in there, and then your challenge problem answer will be up tomorrow too. You did a great job, guys. Now I want you to really think about, is there anything you don't understand? Look through your goals. If there's any questions you don't understand, write them in your notebook and bring those back to class tomorrow, and I'll help you with them and we'll work on them together. Thanks. Have a good night, and I will see you in the morning.